All right. So once you have established your idea and you're ready to execute and start to glue these forms together, this can be a stressful part because you have all these single cells and you've explored all your options, and now you're finally settled down to one idea. And you have to glue them together, and you kind of have one shot. So with this design here, I decided to go with something like this, and this would make a radial design. The nice thing about this, it's flat on one side, which gives me the option to add another layer to the opposite side if I want to, because it's flat against the surface here. So for example, what I mean by that, this is starting to make a curve, and it could be a radial design all the way full circle, or it could be like a half moon shape, like a half of a circle, and then I could just keep adding to it, and I could stand it upright. But if I, the next move here would be, bear with me for a second, is to add forms. I just have this from another previous. In the same orientation as I have here, I would add another layer here, and that layer would glue to this face, and then also part of it would glue on the side of this face, which is nice. So you want to strategize how you would go about this, and I'll talk about that in a second. But before that, so this would go here, and then I could even add another layer, like a third layer. And in an odd way, this almost becomes like this. These three almost appear to be a unit form, but in the same process of doing that, it creates another unit form. So it kind of looked like that. So these three here, I don't know if you're able to see in the video, but it would be 1, 2, and 3. It's kind of hard to hold these together so you can see. And then it would also be here and here and here. So it would be about 3 layers high. I might go full circle, I might go half circle, and then, and what I can do, because it's flat on one side, because it's flush against the ground, I can actually build in the opposite direction another design, the same kind of unit form, just going in the opposite direction. So how would I strategize to figure this out? First, I'm going to go with this layer here. Every design is different. Everything's going to require a different approach, a different strategy, but you want to kind of figure it out. You want to maybe just do a dry run or a dry fitting. Sometimes they use that term in plumbing. So she's going to do a dry fitting, and how I would go about this is probably I would do this layer first, and after I get this layer done, then I would do this layer second, 1, 2, 3, and I would go all the way around. And then I would do the third layer on top of that. And then I would think about if I could apply another layer underneath. So, and then again, this can be stood up once it's completed and glued together. You'll be surprised on what you can do after you glue these together. You're like, oh, I can represent it on its side or whatever. All right. So I've established that I'm going to start assembling this line first. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is just 2 at a time. 2 at a time. And what you don't want to do is just like, eye it. Be like, that looks good enough to me, and this is good enough, and I'll just eye it. No way will you do that. This, I already pre-measured this. It's roughly about 2.5 inches from the line of where this meets this here. And what I'm going to do is measure that. Actually, if this is 2.5 inches, I'm just going to show you a quick trick, because I can't get underneath there, and it's really difficult for me to mark this spot. And I'm hoping that you can see what I'm doing here. So now I'm exactly at 2.5 inches, right? So I'm going to get my pencil. I'm going to put this guy down, and I'm just going to mark that spot. All right. And if you can tell here, I just made a little tiny mark. And again, this is my 4H pencil. It's just super light, and hopefully you won't even have to erase that because it's going to glue like right there. So you want to do that on all of them, but since what you can do now, instead of measuring in that weird diagonal I was just doing, you can measure the distance between here and here, and they should all be the same on every one of these if your single cells are consistent. I'm going to show you how to do that really quickly. Just grab a sheet of paper. Of course, I don't have any laying around, do I? Give me a second here. All right, I have a scrap piece of paper. On this scrap piece of paper, I'm going to mark off the corner, and I'm going to mark off that mark that I just made. And I just gave myself the distance on every single one of them. So all I have to do is just mark this or line this up to that line, and then I can just mark my piece, because all of these are going to have to get marked off. But when you mark these off, you have to make sure, because everyone has a different single cell, and if you, for example, you put it up here and you're like, oh crud, it's on the wrong direction, so you have to make sure that it's at the same orientation before you mark these off. So then you can just mark a few off. I'm just going to mark a couple off now just to kind of get through the video. A little mark. So these are marked. I marked all 5 of them just so I know they're marked. And it's pretty fast and simple at this point. So that's what I'm saying. You want to strategize. You want to find a quick way to go about this, because to be honest, to line this up and that's just going to take too long. So that seemed to be a really quick way. Next thing you're going to do, since I decided to glue these flat and they're going to rest against the surface, if I were to glue this or put some glue here and I just let it dry, the glue through gravity will want to drip down and it will stick itself to the cutting mat. And I don't want to have any glue on my cutting mat. It's going to create a rough surface. So there's a way to get around that. You could just use a piece of tape. Tape isn't porous. And you can just kind of put the tape down, and then you would tape on top of the glue, or you would glue on top of the tape. And then after you glue, you can just kind of move it or slide it a little bit. In this case, I don't have to really tape this. In some cases, for example, if you were going to glue 2 uniforms or 2 single cells together like this, then that definitely you should glue, and then you should use tape and hold, put this on the side, and then make another one. And I can't stress enough that it is important to glue these in parts, in sections, and then you can glue those sections together. For example, I can make 2 uniforms, or I'm sorry, 2, yeah, I mean, I guess it's considered a uniform as well. Here, just like so, I'd glue these together, and I'd make more of those. And then I would take this, and then I would glue this to that. So that's what I'm saying. Do not go one by one by one by one by one. Reason I say that, because if you do have something that meets full circle and you go that route, there's always going to be a gap when you try to get full circle. And if you just kind of do this in parts, you can finagle that gap a little bit, so that when you glue together in parts, you can kind of tape it as a whole and it will fit. So it's just going to be a better practice to do this in parts, 2 by 2 or 3 by 3, maybe 4 by 4. It depends on what your design is. Everyone's going to be a little different. But again, you want to strategize this. It's super important you strategize and figure this out. All right, so I'm just going to glue something real fast. I am going to take my pencil, just so I know where I can put the glue. And I'm just going to trace a line right here, really light line. You won't be able to see it, but I can see the line, and that's where I can put my glue. I was going to glue this side, but I'm not sure how deep it would go, but I know all this will be covered. So I grab my glue. I'm going to put a little bit on there, just like so. And then I'm going to get a little scrap piece of paper, and I'm just going to smear it around. Try to make it even here and kind of see what I'm doing. And if you need more, put more on there. easier to put more on than take some off. Now remember that this glue has it dries quickly, so you want to work kind of fast. All right, I think I'm good there. There's my little gluey thing. I'm just going to put it somewhere where it doesn't there you go. Now I'm just going to clear my area. I'm going to make sure this is on top of the tape. And I'm going to take my side. I'm going to double check that I have this in the right orientation, my single cell. And I'm going to press these two together. And I'm thinking as I'm going here, and I'm just trying to wonder, maybe I could tape it just to make sure there's a nice push, a nice snug fit. And it's kind of hard to tape because I don't want to tape it. It might actually pull it apart. It's kind of in a precarious position here. So I think I'm okay. I mean, I'm pushing these two next to one another, but I don't want to sit here and hold that. I want to work on the next one. So just trying to think of an idea. You could probably use a little weight while you're going to be using this, but something that has a little bit more weight. You could try to just push them together a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think I'm going to mess with that. So what I would do here is, it'd be easy to tape underneath, but I don't want to. I want to keep these flat on the ground, so I definitely don't want to do that. I think it's fine if I were to push them together. I could have possibly added a little bit more glue, just so there's definitely a contact. And once it's pushed together, I'm just going to like gently push my hands away and let it dry. And then I'm going to work on the next one. And then after that, again, this will be dry, and I can put these together and see how far I'm going to go. One more thing, if you were to tape these, in some cases you can tape them. In this case, I think I'm just going to let it ride and see what happens. But that's what I was going to say. If you might want to just work on this one and this one at the same time and get your system down, because you're going to make mistakes, and you might as well make them here and not on every single one of them. So I always refrain students from mass producing too early before they know their system. Figure out your system. It's the same way of you're figuring out your template. You know, there's a system that you have to figure out. Now you're trying to figure out a system of assembly, and you kind of have one shot at this. So you have to take your time and allow yourself some practice in terms of putting a couple together, seeing if it works. So I would do this one next. And after that, I'm just going to put a little tape here. I'm just going to put them like right there. So imagine I glued that, and then after this, because I have this marked off, I can glue it to this one. And again, as far as I go up, then this is together, or as many as I go around, meaning like maybe 7, 8, 9, or if I go full circle. After I do that, then because this is nice and glued down to the surface, I can put my next layer on. And I can put my next layer on and then see where that goes. This is another design. I also have another video of how I was making this, but this is another design, another single unit form. And you kind of see how this, almost the same idea, to be honest, in terms of how I put this together. This was a challenge to figure out how to connect this. And it just worked out that if I glued maybe a full inch at the bottom here, and these points, as you can see, they come out. The idea was to make another on this side, glue them together face to face, and then let it stand almost like a tire, or stand up upside down just like you see here. But you can kind of see how I came full circle, but how I put this together was in pairs. And then after that, I put them together in 4, 1, 2, 3, because this consists of 8. So I put 4 together and 4 together because I put the pairs and made 4. And after that, then I made a hole. And when I made a hole, it was much easier because I only had 2 points of contact, and I could